But he called me up 3 or 4 times. And finally I had a little time. I called him back. And he went on Fox and he started talking about the president called me. I didn't call him. I returned his phone call. And he started talking very personally about how I was feeling, how I was doing. And I said, that's really a betrayal. I didn't talk about how I was feeling. It was a phone call that lasted very quickly. Just, hey, how you doing, Geraldo? How's it going? It's not my deal. He's not my psychiatrist. Right. But he made it sound like it was such a big deal. It was a nothing. All I did was return his call. But he said, the president called me, like I'm reaching out to him. And I haven't spoken to him since.
So despite Trump's efforts to put his mask back on, right, to quickly cover it up, you heard the truth pour out of him. Call me after I lost. Geraldo, I mean, I won. But he lost. He lost. He knows it. And speaking conversationally, he admitted it on tape. But meanwhile, publicly, and even there in that call, the disgraced ex-president continues to perpetuate and spread the lie that has undermined trust and faith in our elections, in American democracy, the lie that his own supporters have bought into hook, line, and sinker, some of them the cost of their freedom, their liberty. The lie that fueled the supporters into committing a deadly coup against the United States government at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. The lie for which dozens of Trump's allies have been indicted across several states now. More than half of all Republican voters believe the lie that Trump couldn't even keep up in a taped interview. But now we know. The cult leader doesn't even believe the lie. The mask slipping is where we start the hour with co-editor-in-chief of Variety, author of the new book. We showcased it here yesterday. He's back, Apprentice in Wonderland, How Donald Trump and Mark Burnett Took America Through the Looking Glass. Ramin Sotoudeh is back with us. Ramin, I loved everything about our conversation yesterday, but as a show, we have sought to really understand how the lie about Trump's defeat in 2020 has undermined voting rights. Almost 400 voter suppression bills have been passed in 48 states in this country, predicated on a lie. The January 6th insurrection happens. Mike Pence doesn't endorse Donald Trump. First time that's ever happened in our country's history. And it's such a precious piece of reporting amid many other precious pieces of reporting that even Trump let the mask slip with you and said, Geraldo called me after I lost. Just tell me what that moment was like for you sitting across from it.
We were sitting at the same table. This was in August 2021. He was very comfortable that day because we were actually watching clips of The Apprentice. And I think part of the reason why the mask slipped off was that he was remembering his life as an entertainer. He was very amused. He was excited to see himself in the boardroom. And this is all performance art for Donald Trump. My book really tries to get into the psyche of who Donald Trump is, what his motivations are, what he's doing as a politician, quote, politician, because I make the argument in the book that he's not really a politician. And the contestants I talked to said that Donald Trump is an actor. He played a role on this reality show. And as a candidate pursuing the White House, he also played a role. As President of the United States, he also played a role, and this lie that he perpetuates is also part of that role. He's acting the part of this aggrieved politician who claims that the election was stolen from him because he knows that's something his base loves. He loves to distort reality, and we, like the character in Alice in Wonderland, are going down the looking glass in this story where he's creating false narratives, distorting the truth, and confusing the American public.
Ramin, did you follow the January 6th public hearings closely at all?
I did.
I mean, I asked that because this is part of a pattern, and what's so unique about it is everything else was a witness, right? So Cassidy Hutchinson testifies to it. Alyssa Farah testified to walking into the Oval Office to check on Trump, and that's when he's watching television and mutters, "I can't believe I lost to this guy." But you have it on tape, and I wonder, I'm going to read. To our audience, Trump's response to this part of the book and this revelation that we were going to play the tape. This is his campaign spokesperson. After recognizing the importance of The Apprentice, its significant cultural impact on a global scale, and Trump's remarkable role in forever changing the landscape of entertainment, this writer has now chosen to allow Trump derangement syndrome to rot his brain like so many other losers whose entire existence revolves around Trump. That's a campaign person. What's notable is what's not in there, right? The dog that doesn't bark. No denial that Trump knows he lost.
It's notable, and it's also part of the performance art, right? That's an outrageous, over-the-top, crazy statement that you would expect from a reality star who engages in feuds, calls people's names, makes up names, creates false narratives. What was also interesting about this moment was that the story of why he and Geraldo had a falling out traces back to the fact that after they spoke, Geraldo went on, it was called Twitter at the time, and said the president will accept the results of the election. And Donald Trump, according to Geraldo, said a version of that to him on the phone shortly after the election, and then changed his mind and decided that this election, he was going to claim the election was stolen from him, and he was going to perpetuate that lie that we were talking about. And so that's the reason why he stopped talking to Geraldo. But it all goes back to the fact that he's playing a part. He's pretending, he's created this false narrative, and millions of people believe him.
I mean, I think you have a frame that's really instructive for anyone who's trying to cover Trump in this moment, right? Because the other mask that you take off is the idea that he ever saw himself as the leader of anything. He didn't see himself as a president. And I want to play another piece of tape that you've given to us exclusively. And this is him talking about Dennis Rodman's acumen to deal with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Let me play this.
Dennis was a pretty cool cat in many ways, I'll tell you. Hey, look, he dated Madonna when she was the #1 person. You got to have something going, right?
He also showed up, I think, to one of the summits you had with Kim Jong-un because he knew Kim very well. Do you remember that?
So Kim Jong-un really liked him.
Yeah.
Legit.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I can get these guys out of Harvard government and central casting. They couldn't do anything with Kim Jong-un. A guy like Dennis could. I didn't use Dennis for it,
Right.
but I thought about it a couple of times before I got to know Kim Jong-un. But Dennis would have done a better job than your traditional people, your traditional Ivy League people that always do that stuff and they have no personality. No, Kim Jong-un liked him. You know, he coached their basketball team.
Right.
And he did. I asked him about that. He said, I like Dennis.
You asked Kim during one of the summits.
Yeah, I asked him. He liked him. And by the way, Dennis liked him, too.
I mean, I don't even know if the looking glass does it. I mean, this is someone who murders his own people. I mean, Aquarians of Pyongyang. I mean, this is one of the most brutal dictatorships in the world. Represents a growing threat to this country with the new alliance with Putin. And Trump is so cavalier about it. He thinks Dennis is better than anyone who's studied North Korea's nuclear capabilities or understands the geopolitical impact of an alliance with Vladimir Putin. Say more about this part of your interview.
This was a very strange moment in our interview. And to me, it all traces back to Donald Trump saying that because Dennis Rodman in the 90s dated Madonna, he's, quote, a cool cat. And that is the headspace that he's in, right? It's the wanting to be in the proximity of fame, seeing fame as a currency, seeing celebrity as a currency, the ultimate currency, and having no qualifications in terms of leadership. When he says that Dennis Rodman is better than these guys from Harvard, which he calls central casting, and somehow Dennis Rodman, who was a contestant twice on The Celebrity Apprentice, you know, dealt with being an alcoholic on the show, was known for these very messy antics on the show, somehow had a better handle on global diplomacy and dealing with Kim Jong-un than people in our government who went to Harvard, who studied what we need to do as in terms of our government, in terms of making sure that we are handling this in the professional, correct way. It was very jarring. It was very frightening. And this is what the American public need to know. This is the way in which Donald Trump handles diplomacy. This is the way in which he sees his role as President of the United States. And it's a continuation of his role as the host of The Apprentice. He is a reality show character that is conducting himself in the White House like a celebrity who's pretending to be someone else.
I mean, I've got a question for you. I mean, you had extraordinary access to Trump. You are, and if I'm wrong, I hope someone will call me directly and tell me. But you're the only person that I know of who had access to 6 taped interviews with Donald Trump after he lost the 2020 election. And it sounds like he was forthcoming. It sounds like he let you lead the conversations. If I have any of that wrong, please interject.
He did. He did. We spent a lot of time together.
What did you make of how easy it was to get to him by simply telling him, you know, you're writing about this thing that he's more proud of than anything he did as president?
Well, that was also strange, right? And when we started these conversations, it was in May 2021. And at the time, certainly, I don't know if most people thought that Donald Trump would decide to run for president and become the nominee again after the insurrection. And he was very deflated, but it was very easy to access him. I went to Trump Tower. There was no one around. I went up the elevator. He was sitting alone in his office. He didn't seem to have a lot of people around him. He seemed very resentful, very lonely, very sad. He wanted to devote a significant amount of time to talking to me. And in a lot of the tapes, because I went back and listened to some of these tapes as we provided you with this exclusive footage, he talks about how excited he is to be talking about The Apprentice, how much he enjoys it, how happy he is. And the reason I got so much access was because this is what he wants to talk about. He's not interested in being commander-in-chief. He's interested in reality TV.
Ramin, stay with us. I want to bring into our conversation two of our favorite friends, former Republican Congressman, MSNBC political analyst David Jolly, also joining us, Democratic strategist, director of the public policy program at Hunter College, MSNBC political analyst Basil Smikle. I mean, David Jolly, I didn't dare to hope that there would be an aha moment in how I could cover Trump, but I feel like Ramin's reporting offers us that aha moment, that he's in on the joke. He tells Ramin, after I lost, Geraldo called me. I mean, it's a tragedy that to Trump, his supporters are dupes, but it's a remarkable gift to sort of have this body of reporting as we head into the general election.
Yeah, it is, Nicolle. And I think what I'm taken by Ramin's reporting is this. We see how fragile and unqualified Donald Trump is to be president of the United States, someone with that type of eggshell personality and ego, but also somebody that is so superficial. You question whether or not they can command the presidency and the Oval Office. But I'm also struck by, and this goes back to some of Ramin's previous interviews as well, part of it is just personality of Donald Trump, admittedly or apparently narcissistic personality and questions around that. But other issues are kind of frontal lobe questions. I mean, true competency, ability to command the presidency and to lead the nation. And I guess I would be curious of Ramin kind of in that space. I mean, it's one thing to see him as a reality star, but as a reality star who is so consumed by Dennis Rodman and Madonna and The Apprentice, is there a bigger picture there? I mean, questions around his remembering, Ramin, you coming to previous interviews and so forth. The personality, I think we know. The fragility, we know. We've seen it. The arrogance, we know. But on the competency piece, the ability to lead the nation, Ramin, to the extent you could perhaps provide color to that, I think would be fascinating.
Well, I think the answer to that is no. He is not able to lead the nation. We saw that last time, and we will see it again. He also can't speak to what he accomplished as president of the United States, right? He told me that I was vaccinated because of him and because of what he did. He said he wished that he, never listened to Fauci, was very inconsistent on COVID, was very resentful that people blamed him for COVID, but also, as I said yesterday, was celebrating that COVID rates had spiked in India, which made him, he thought, look better. We talked about him performing in 2005 at the Emmys and